Welcome back to my channel. Here are some scary stories about haunted hotels that will make you never want to travel again. And if you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to get more. In our first story, I found my own room. 2 years ago, I was working for a mid-sized company, and we were going on a nationwide conference. So our office rented a huge bus, and we went around the country for almost a week. On the last night, we ended up in a pretty crappy hotel. The drive was exhausting, so most of us went straight to our rooms. The guy sharing a room with me was named Andrew. He goes, "Alex Rat, you know, I think we got the crappy room. The shower looks like it hasn't been cleaned in months." Yeah, it's fine. Let's just go to sleep. We have a long ride tomorrow." Next morning comes around and we got on the bus ready to head home. The guy sitting next to me says, "Hey Alex, where's your room? I haven't seen you since we got here." "We got the crappy room, remember?" I said. "I don't have a room." "What do you mean? You weren't in our room this morning. Did you just forget or something?" He started panicking. "Oh, God, you're right. I must have forgotten. Oh, my God. Why? Everyone's gonna get mad at me." He ran off to find the driver. I didn't think much of it, so I just sat down and waited for them to tell me what happened. The driver comes over and asks me, "Alex, can you come with me?" We go to the back of the bus, and he tells me, "We're gonna need you to stay here until we get home. There's a problem with your room." I say, "What room? I don't have a room. I've been staying with Andrew in room 328. There is no record of you being here. And I saw a security guard checking the cameras this morning looking for a missing person. He looked like he was in his 30s, but he disappeared and no one knew where he went." Then he asked me if I was in a room by myself, and I told him I was. He looked super relieved and went away. I guess he didn't recognize me because I cut my hair since I've seen him last. Then he asked me if I recognized anyone matching my description, and I said no. He looked sad, then thanked me and went to his car and drove off. "We have no choice but to drive you home." I was scared but complied and went home. I was so pissed. In our next story, a night at a haunted hotel. I was staying at a historic hotel on the Oregon-Washington border for a night on a business trip. Being a low-level employee, I was put up in the cheapest room they could find, which happened to be on the top floor with a very creaky ceiling. This place was built in the 1920s, and apparently it hosted many big bands in its heyday. After checking in and finding my room, I went exploring. Since the restaurant and bar were closed, I headed to the local pub for a couple of beers. While I was out, I met a friendly woman who turned out to be the owner of the hotel. She invited me to join her and her friends for a drink. Over the course of the evening, they regaled me with tales of the hotel's history, including many stories of strange occurrences in the guest rooms. Before I headed back, they warned me to stay away from room 309. Apparently, the previous owner had been driven insane by whatever was going on in that room and eventually died of a heart attack while standing in front of it. The spirits of other guests also lingered in the halls, shaking curtains and making regular appearances in photographs taken by guests. The owner's friend was even dragged out of bed one night by a sheet. Somewhat spooked but feeling brave, I headed upstairs. I went straight to room 309 and knocked lightly. No response. I tried the handle, and it opened easily. The owner had said the room was empty and being renovated, but it was clearly lived in. The bathroom sink had fresh flowers in it, the sheets on the bed were unwrinkled, and there was a half-empty bottle of shampoo in the shower. I considered calling down to the front desk, but I was curious. Turning on the overhead light, I approached the bed and leaned down to inspect it closely. Sure enough, in the middle of the covers, I found the imprint of a human body. Suddenly, I felt a cold presence behind me and a whisper in my ear said, "Get out." I jumped out of bed, knocking the flower vase off the nightstand. It hit the floor with a loud crash, and I booked it out of the room. As I ran down the stairs, I had a voice call out, "It's too late." I made it all the way to my car before the terror subsided. As dawn approached, I drove to the nearest coffee shop to wait out the morning. Looking back at the hotel, I saw a plume of smoke rising above the trees. The whole place was on fire. And in our final story, creepy things happen in my hotel. About 15 years ago, I was traveling abroad and stayed in quite a few hotels. One was nice, others not so much. It was located in the countryside. Getting there required a ferry ride followed by a 30-minute drive. The hotel was old and massive, consisting of several buildings scattered around the grounds. I arrived in the afternoon, registered, and was shown to my room by a young girl. No one else was around, and the hotel was obviously closed for the season. Just as we got to my room, a heavy metal cart holding trash cans rolled down the hall toward us. I thought it was strange, but figured it would be the only excitement during my stay. Little did I know I was wrong. That night, lightning and thunder cracked and roared throughout the night. I was jolted awake to find myself staring at the ceiling. My entire room had been illuminated by lightning. At first, I assumed the lights were just flickering on and off. I looked closer and realized the illumination was coming from outside. I got out of bed and pulled the drapes aside. It was obvious now that the windows were glowing eerily. I watched in amazement as my curtains swayed gently in the breeze. They were closed tightly from the inside, yet the room was bright. Fearing for my safety, I called the front desk. No answer. Thinking it was a prank, I went to the adjacent room, which was also unlocked. I shouted in the room next door. Again, no answer. Feeling uneasy, I dialed emergency services and described the situation. They told me to stay in my room until help arrived. An or-passet. The storm continued, and I became increasingly anxious. The glow outside intensified, and I worried that the glass would shatter. I decided to seek shelter downstairs. As I raced out of the room, I heard chains dragging metal moans. Emerging from the stairwell, I rushed to the main door and fumbled with the handle. Locked! I pounded on the door. Startled, a woman in a Victorian nightgown suddenly appeared in the window. She beckoned for me to follow her. Panicked, I ran to my room. Peeking outside, I saw the woman standing in the hall. Assuming it was my imagination, I returned to the window. Moments later, the woman was gone. Finally, the storm subsided. Dawn arrived, and I noticed small pebbles were now lodged in the windowsills. Overnight, my room had become inhabitable. I rushed to the door and flung it open. No trace of the woman remained. And those are some scary stories about haunted hotels. Which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.